Hello everybody. Next up it's Arsenal away on Wednesday night. Kick-off is at 8 PM for the benefit of BT Sport. There's no engineering works to speak of, the main impediment to your journey most likely being the plethora of such once-a-year drinkers as have been allowed to attend their first Christmas party in 2 years. Look out for the mistletoe. So Arsenal then. Well, they've improved a bit since we were all laughing at them earlier on for being bottom of the league. To the extent they're now only 2 points and 2 places behind us, with 26 points gained from the 16 games played so far. Having lost their opening 3 games of the season, they've had patches of games. Just as they look like going on some sort of run, something crops up to derail them. Their last 6 games started with a 1-0 defeat of Watford, followed by a 4-0 thrashing at Anfield. A win at home to Newcastle was then followed by defeats at Everton and Manchester United, and frankly last week's 3-0 defeat of luckless Southampton was, well, to say that result was flattering was something of an understatement. The difference between the sides being the form of the goalkeepers. Aaron Ramsdale had a stormer in the home goal, whilst at the other end emergency signing Wally Caballero belied his 40 years of age, looking as he did like a 50-year-old who'd retired some years previously, having been propping up the bar in the clubhouse when the normal keeper went AWOL. Incidentally, this sort of thing actually happened when my dad came to watch me once playing for Midland Bank in the 1980s. The laws having changed since his last game in 1973, Dad seemed highly bemused when penalised for picking the ball up having rolled it to the edge of the box, going on to ask the ref for notice in writing of any further changes that might have occurred since his last outing for Old Plastovians. We won 5-3 against Ibis, courtesy of a Percy hat-trick in case you're interested. Daisy informs me that Ramsdale was one of no fewer than 6 signings brought in by Arteta during the window. Ramsdale initially proved to have been an expensive mistake for Sheffield United, who let him go for about £800,000 after just a handful of cup appearances. He ended up at Bournemouth, who, in addition to playing him in the first 11, also gave him a couple of loan spells. He was, as a result, in the AFC Wimbledon side, who beat us in the FA Cup a few years back. Though from memory he was largely unemployed in that match, such was our performance on the night. Sheffield United bought him back for £18.5 million, and he was ever present in the side that went down, gaining their Player of the Year award in the process. His performances were such that he was never going to be allowed to hang around in the lower divisions for too long, and Arsenal paid out £24 million for the keeper, thus making Sheffield United a net profit on the player of, well, a mere £6 million or so. Benfica must be missing a left-back following the signing of Nuno Tavares for a reported £7.2 million. The 21-year-old, who depressingly was born in the year 2000, arrived after 2 years of first-team experience at the Real Stadium of Light, having worked his way through the B team there. His ancestry is that of the Cape Verde Islands, though the player himself was born in Lisbon and has been capped up to and including under-21 level by the Portuguese. Although at his age there's plenty of time for full recognition, it would not be a surprise were the Cape Verde Islands to make discreet inquiries as to his availability for senior international selection the longer he goes without a full cap for Portugal. The signing of Albert Lokonga is one that meets with my wholehearted approval. Not for any footballing reasons, it's just I applaud the arrival of any footballer with a proper footballer's name like Albert, even if we're supposed to pronounce it the French way, Albert. Lokonga was born in the town of Verviers, which incidentally is the home of a fine music venue called the Spirit of 66. Or at least it was until a few months ago when the place was left underwater by flash flooding. Lokonga, who is of Congolese ancestry, has come up through the ranks of the Belgian age-level sides and gained his first full cap earlier this year in a 5-2 win over Estonia in a World Cup qualifier. At club level, he was an Anderlecht youth product and made 69 appearances for the senior side in the league before Arsenal brought him across the channel for £18 million this summer. Now, is it just me, or was the £50 million fee paid to Brighton for Ben White, well, a bit eye-watering? I appreciate that players qualified for England tend to fetch a bit of a premium in the transfer market, but, well, I don't know, it just seems rather a lot for a player who didn't make his Premier League debut for Brighton until last season, though he had gained considerably more experience on loan at Leeds, with whom he featured as part of their championship-winning promotion side. Leeds made a number of attempts to sign the defender on a full-time basis, but I guess 50 million might have just been a bit out of their range. White was part of the England Euro 2020 or 2021, whatever, squad this summer. The final signing was Japanese defender Takehiro Tomiyasu, who arrived on a £16 million deal from Bologna. A regular in the Japanese international side, he's supposedly able to play either at right back or in the centre of defence, though most observers suggest that he looks a lot more comfortable on the right than he does in the centre. One player who we won't be facing will be Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. Although Arsenal themselves have been tight-lipped on the reason for his banishment to the naughty step, it is being reported that the player returned back to the club late from an authorised trip to foreign climes. If that is the case, Aubameyang has previous. He missed their win over Spurs back in March for similar reasons. If this latest transgression is a repeat offence, it will be no surprise that he is being suspended for this one as well as missing the Southampton game. This time around, Arsenal have also gone one step further and stripped the player of the captaincy, leading to speculation that the player will be looking for a new employer when the window opens in a couple of weeks' time. Worth a cheeky bit, perhaps? No, wages may be an issue, of course. Well, enough of them as we moved on to the wild and wacky world of association football. It was a corker of a weekend for the incompetents and nincompoops at PGMOL, wasn't it? If ever you wanted to see how VAR has been corrupted from its intended use to improve standards to a system whereby errors could be swept under the carpet to protect an increasingly poor group of officials, last weekend was it. Penalty decisions at Anfield, where the officials seem to be operating on a give one dive in every three basis, Manchester City and Leicester all seemed impossible to give by anyone with access to a replay. The excuse given for the Man City penalty was particularly amusing. "Oh, we couldn't find a conclusive angle," came the whine. In a rare attempt at subtle criticism, Gary Lineker on Match of the Day remarked laconically, "It took us just a few seconds," or words to that effect. Perhaps, "Oh, we didn't want to find a conclusive angle," would probably have been a more honest response from the officials. There'll be more on this subject when we get to our match, of course. Meanwhile, much hilarity as the draw for the so-called Champions League took on all the air of one of those less funny, more slapstick-oriented carry-on films. Having come up with a format designed to keep those arrogant enough to want to have their own Super League happy, the draws for these competitions have become more and more complicated over the years, with caveats at each stage to ensure the likes of Manchester United and Liverpool extract as much money out of the system as possible. So each time a team is drawn out, they have to perform all sorts of gymnastics to ensure various teams are kept apart. Except this time they didn't, meaning that they had to do the whole thing again. Cup draws used to be a relatively simple thing. The rattling of balls in a velvet bag, best experienced by the medium of the wireless. It's still the apex of such presentations, with the prospect of an errant ball bouncing across the floor at Lancaster Gate, as it was, being the only major logistical worry. However, both FIFA and UEFA have turned these events into such a prolonged waste of time. It will be a major surprise if the draw for next year's World Cup is actually complete before the final is due to be played. Not that we here are totally exempt from such criticism. In recent years, the League Cup draw has had its own disasters, including that time they elected to make the draw at 4 a.m. UK time somewhere in Southeast Asia, just in case anyone here might see it happen. On to us then. Well, it was just our luck to be misfiring on a day when PGMOL had elected to abandon all pretence of competence and honesty. On a day when many were not performing to the standards they themselves would admit to be capable of, you needed the match officials to at least be behaving themselves. Now, I have no idea what referee Scott actually saw. Penalty areas are crowded, and it's entirely possible that his viewer angle was blocked. That happens. However, I know for certain that Jonathan Moss saw the incident because I saw exactly the same as him. I'd suggest that any paid official who did not think that was a penalty has no right to be drawing a salary in the job. There are only two real possible explanations for the decision. Either Moss is incompetent, and there's a lot to back up that theory, or he had his own other reasons for ignoring the laws of the game. I don't believe our referees are corrupt. Let's face it, they're not clever enough. They're so stupid that for the most part they'd lose £100 if they broke into a bookies. But frankly, PGMOL's complacency in prioritising and maintaining the status quo over improvement continues to provide the perfect petri dish for the growth of some very nasty, smelly stuff. And Riley will have the brass neck to look surprised if that stuff ever escapes. I mentioned players misfiring. The one standout exception from that comment has to be Declan Rice, who, even by his own high standards, had an extraordinary match. Those runs out of defence ought to have pointed the way for his teammates, but sadly it was not to be so. On the injury front, we're keeping fingers crossed for Aaron Cresswell, who was apparently close to a return to the starting lineup against Burnley. Johnson, Fredericks and Ogbon are all absent, whilst Zuma, though also absent, has begun to show up as having a 25% chance of making an appearance. Now, that's nonsense, obviously, but it is an indication that he's making progress. So on to a prediction then. Well, Arsenal are likely to play in a manner that favours our counter-attacking game. And on another day, Southampton would have thumped them last week, but for some fine goalkeeping and a little bit of luck going the home side's way. Counter that with our being a little out of sorts last week, and one is left with a bit of a conundrum. This has a bit of the air of the Chelsea about it, given that we came off the back for that match against a disappointing result against Brighton. So one would have not expected a win there, but a win we got. I'm almost tempted to go for a win this week. However, I'll be a bit more pragmatic this time round, and I'll plump for honours even. So the £2.50 I was going to send to PGMOL so I can own my own referee, and the way they work I'd want change out of that. I will instead place the money on a 2-2 draw this time round, if it pleases you, Mr. Winston. Enjoy the game.
Right, so we're here in the offices of a Late Late Show with the host of a Late Late Show, James Corden.
Hi.
Big West Ham fan.
Yes. And big knees up Mother Brown, man.
Yeah.
Get on the forum at kumb.com. Come on, you irons.